Qalandar Menon has been an activist and academic teacher in Lahore for the past 16 years. He grew up in London and is from Sindh ancestrally. In London, with many others, he founded Naked Punch Review, a publication and event organizing collective that worked on issues of decolonizing art, philosophy, and politics. Writers of that magazine include Arundhati Roy, Chomsky, Tariq Ali, Dante Zizek, Zia Zadai, Selma James, and Spivak, among others. In Pakistan, he organized Cafe Ball, a cultural cafe for activists and social movements, and was involved in the lawyers' movements, prisoner release campaign for political prisoners of Gilgit Baltistan, and has supported as editors writers from Balochistan and FATA. As an academic, his work covers the philosophical currents that arise from decolonial movements, history of social movements in Pakistan, and structures of power in Pakistan from pre-colonial times to the present. I'll now hand over to Qalandar.
Thank you. What I didn't mention in my bio is that I live with about 18 cats, and one of them is breaking the door trying to get in. So if you have a cold, I have cats to deal with. So if there are any interruptions, it will be the cats. I mean, political prisoners, Pakistan. Oh, where do we start? I mean, anyone of Pakistani origin in the audience? Can I just maybe see hands so I know? Okay. Yeah, and everyone knows Imran Khan, right? I mean, he's probably the most famous political prisoner right now. Whether you agree with him or not, he is a political prisoner. One of the questions I was asked to talk about was the definition of political prisoners. And I don't know the technical definition or anything, but I think it's important to note that there are not just left-wing political prisoners. I mean, obviously, those are the ones I work with. Those are the ones I have solidarity with, including in India, like Umar Khalid. But also, but there are right-wing political prisoners. If this, deep state, as we sometimes call it, but you can just call it the military. And the military, the higher ranks in the military no longer want you, whether you're left-wing or right-wing, it doesn't really matter. You will become, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned that you're fighting for constitutional democracy, because that suggests you had it in some form. I think Pakistan has never had it, so we're not fighting for constitutional, I mean, we are also fighting for constitutional democracy, but we're very, very far behind. It seems the case in India is that, there's an experience of it. We just had a completely rigged election. Many of in the previous parliamentary cycle, a friend of mine, not very good friend, but someone I know, worked with a communist, the first Marxist political member of National Assembly, Ali Wazir from Waziristan. He spent most of his term as a parliamentarian in prison as a political prisoner. So it's pretty common here to be in prison if you do not follow the military line. And it doesn't matter if you're left-wing or right-wing, center. So most of our prime ministers have been in prison. Nawaz Sharif, of course, but also Bhutto was hanged by the military. The list is endless. I was thinking just a few minutes ago that I'm writing a book called People's History of Pakistan, kind of emulating Howard Zinn's book on America. And I remember I wrote something on political prisoners just a few weeks ago, and I'll just quickly read this paragraph because it's really quite illustrative of political prisoners. So in 1960s, Eisenhower was coming, and Pakistan in 1964 arrested, and probably one of our most famous political prisoners, Faiz Ahmed Faiz, the famous Urdu poet. He was arrested, I think, in 1954 under what was called the Rawalpindi conspiracy case. And it was really just the Pakistani military bureaucracy and then political kind of elite, in terms of parliamentary elite. They decided to side with America in the Cold War. And one of the conditions is that you get rid of the leftist and the left wing in Pakistan. So, they made an example of a few communists like Faiz Ahmed Faiz. A little later, they continued to arrest communists. And in 1959, following Pakistan's kind of subservience to American power. And I think this obviously relates to Palestine and Israel, that, you know, US power and its impact on political prisoners is something, you know, I think you all will, I'm sure, know and will talk about. But it really is, we're not just fighting our own military or our own, we really are always, and I mean, when I say always, since the founding of Pakistan, fighting also imperialism. And that's very clear when I read the literature of the 1950s and 60s and the left-wing parties and the manifestos that go on and on about the American influence in the problems, or local problems in Pakistan. So anyway, so Eisenhower is visiting, and the person writing this instance is a communist named B.M. Kuti Saab. He was from Kerala, but he lived in Pakistan. And he, in his autobiography, writes about his time in prison. And I'm going to quote from his autobiography. American President Eisenhower was scheduled to make a one-day trip to Karachi on 8th December 1969. A week before the American president's expected arrival, there was a citywide crackdown on progressive political workers and student activists. Ali Mukhtar Rizvi and Iqbal Menon, no relation of mine, were back with us, along with a couple of other under a 30-day detention order. The laughable order said, so this was the government order, whereas the government has reliable information that you have been carrying out a whispering campaign against the impeding visit of the President of the United States of America, and that the government is satisfied that your activities could endanger the personal security of the President of America, I'm pleased to order you be detained for a period of 30 days under the Public Safety Act. He goes on, the American president came, stayed for 24 hours and went home, but our comrades were in jail for 30 days and nights. The joke did not end there. A Dr. M.A. Mahmood, a final year student at Dow Medical College and a prominent leader of National Student Federation, was arrested after the president had left. And he was arrested under the same order, the impeding visit of the president. So he goes on to write that Mahmood was being detained for 30 days to prevent him from endangering the security of the president of the United States, who had already left the country. They nabbed him, for a president who had come and gone. I think what Kuti's point was to show that the state is pathological. You know, they're arresting someone after the order is no longer applicable, the president has come and gone, yet they're arresting leftists. So he's trying to show that the state not only is subservient to extent to American imperialism and orders, that is pathological. They will do more than is demanded of them. And I think Imran Khan's case, although that's not what I'm going to talk about mainly, but Imran Khan's case is also illustrative of this same subservience to American power. It's impossible to know what role America did play in his kind of, arrest and PTI's kind of the crackdown on PTI. But we do know that Imran Khan would have supported the Palestinian cause at this moment in time. And he would have been a very, very strong Muslim voice for Palestine if he was out, if he wasn't in prison even, let alone in power. So I think there is definitely a connection there. There is a fear of him. And I'm not a fan of Imran Khan. I mean, I worked against his party, for decades, even though I do know him, but I don't support him politically, but I would support his right to be out of prison, and he has supported Palestine. Okay, so political prisoners more broadly. So at the moment, we do have a crackdown on PTI. My former students, my colleagues even have been arrested for supporting PTI. Anyone associated with PTI can be arrested at any time. And the pattern, if those of you from Pakistan might be aware already, is that they're picked up, pressure is put on them, including torture, and then they make and they're taken to a press club, or they're taken to television station where they give an interview, and then where they resign from PTI, denounce Imran Khan and PTI as a violent anti-state party, and they say either they're joining one of the new parties that the military is supporting, or they say they're quitting politics. So this is a pattern that's been going on and on now since Imran Khan was ousted. And they are political prisoners, and but they're not suffering the most. I mean, it's horrible to say who is suffering more, but to understand the issue of political prisoners, we have to understand the kind of structure of governance in Pakistan. And I think it's probably similar in India, but it's maybe more contrasted in Pakistan. And governance in Pakistan is not even. You're governed differently based on your class, caste, of course, gender, and very important, geographical location, and therefore ethnicity. So a Baloch is not treated in the same way as a Punjabi, and a Sindhi is not going to be treated in the same way as someone from Gilgit-Baltistan. So this differentiation is very, very important. And my work has been, when I've tried to understand politics, I'm a professor of political science, but when I'm trying to understand what's going on, I quickly realized from my students and others that governance just isn't the same. So we can't talk about Pakistan as some kind of unified area with citizenry politics that we may have lost or had. You have to talk from each and every location. So let's start from FATA, or North and South Waziristan, which borders Afghanistan. This is where Osama bin Laden and others are said to have been hiding. This is where the Taliban have often been in control. So if you look at the history of this area for the last 2-3 decades, and we're not going further back, then it is an area where you have missing people, and you have a movement for their release from a leader, a veterinarian scientist who's an amazing activist called Manzoor Pashtun. And the movement is called Pakhtun Tahaffuz movement, the movement for the protection of Pakhtuns. And he has noted and documented thousands of missing people. And this is where, the so-called Taliban is. And if you look at how power operates, it's very, very kind of divided. So in a sense, governance happens on the body of the Wazir, people in Waziristan. You have 2-3 factions of the Taliban. You have pro-Pakistani military faction of the Taliban, or had. Now they're, now they're in power. Then you have a faction called Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, which is against the Pakistani military and wants, so that one, so we kind of sometimes good Taliban, bad Taliban. There's the Taliban the Pakistani military supports and they can control a little bit, and one that wants to implement Taliban ideology across Pakistan and they cannot control. But for the local people, both of them are militias, and they can enact acts of violence, including disappearances or, and murder at will, and the state, doesn't exist in the form of a protectorate, if it ever does. Then you also had, obviously it's stopped right now, but it can restart anytime. You had drones. So I've had students whose families have been victim of drones, and they've seen people around their neighborhoods attacked by drones. A whole generation grew up with the sound of drones above them for, they grew up with it, and I used to know, they were my students and we talked about it. Obviously there's a lot of trauma, a lot of memories. So you had American power operating there as well. So they could take a life at will. Rendition, of course, was happening during the war on terror, where they're taking people from Pakistan with our state's knowledge and sometimes without our state's knowledge and rendering them to black sites as well. But FATA, you have drones, you have good Taliban, bad Taliban, and then you have the Pakistani military also acting out collective punishment, disappearances, and its power on the people. So governance there is fractured. Every group that I mentioned, 3 minutes. I'm only at FATA. Okay. Every group can kind of take a life. Power, the ability to enact violence on the body is how I'm trying to understand governance. Who can kind of, control the body and how? And here violence is very brutal, it's very direct, but it's fractured between all these factions, and all people there are vulnerable to each of them. And the movement that is trying to change that is called Pakhtun Tahaffuz movement. They have a huge presence in the diaspora. and I hope you will kind of learn from them and connect with them, and I hope they will show solidarity with your work as well. Because I have 3 minutes, I'm going to move quickly to probably the site I know best as a researcher, and I want to talk about two sites, maybe 1.5 minute, 1.5 minute. One is Gilgit-Baltistan, which is obviously related to Kashmir, and it's disputed territory, long history. But there we have a different model. You don't have a huge faction of the Taliban, though it is there, but it's not huge. They have done a few attacks, but very rare. But Gilgit-Baltistan is constitutionally not part of Pakistan, and it's governed by the military and the bureaucracy, and it's governed, effectively they govern it. And there certain forms of laws apply. And my best friend was a political prisoner for 10 years, and I led his release campaign here and in Islamabad. His name is Baba Jan, very famous activist, Baba Jan. I'll type it or I'll repeat it, and do look him up. And he was, he's a community leader through Gilgit-Baltistan, passes CPAC, and he was about to win the election for his little district in the Legislative Council, not part of our parliament. It's a separate little kind of a bit like the organization in West Bank, FATA. They just have local authority control, no real power, sham kind of parliament. But still, he was going to win, and so they put him in prison for that and other reasons. Their disappearances, killings are rare. They do put people in prison. They use anti-terrorism law, or they just take people. But there is a sense of law now. But it's. I want to kind of use that as a contrast to Balochistan, because that is the site of what I call, and a lot of theoreticians will call, necropolitics, politics of death. Now, this is really horrible. Here, you have thousands of missing people, and we call it kill and dump. And it starts systematically in 2009 when 3 nationalists, by nationalists, I mean people who would support a separate Balochistan, leaders, but democratic, not guerrilla fighters. They were picked up from their lawyer's office, and their bodies were dumped in outside the town on a dusty road. That was just the beginning, and it's gone on, and anyone can be picked up. There are checkposts. If you wear symbols, like some of you might have a symbol of Free Palestine. In Balochistan, if you have a symbol of Che Guevara at one time, or even now, if you have a Che Guevara type beret hat, or for a while it was famous to have a star among the Baloch who were left wing, they will pick you up, torture you, and just dump your body. You would be picked up for having a left wing book on your mobile, like as an SMS, or for holding a magazine. Thousands of Baloch students have been killed, and thousands are missing. We don't know who's alive, who's dead. So political prison, in Balochistan, there is no sense of constitutionalism, no sense of going to the court. People are disappeared. There's no accountability. They're kept in black sites, inside garrisons. We don't know where they're kept. I've interviewed a few people who've been tortured, who've been picked up and released after many years. They're picked up, blindfolded, taken somewhere. They don't know where they are, kept in dark, tortured especially the first 3 weeks. If they're released from that site, they're taken to another site. Normally it goes from either, if you're picked up by the military intelligence, then you're handed over and they clear you after torturing you. If they clear you after a year, 2 years, 3 years, then you're given to the ISI. And then if they clear you, then you're released. But, in that process, you're in these black sites, and there's thousands, literally thousands of people missing. And many of them have been killed, and their bodies have been dumped. At first, they would put tags, because the torture was so horrific, they would put tags in their pocket identifying the name of the body. Now they don't even do that. So people are not able to identify if the body is one of the missing people or not. And we had and again, you mentioned women and women's resistance. One of the interesting and important points is that with all men activists, victims of this kill and dump, and literally you just have to be a Baloch with a book to be a victim. Women have taken over, and they are leading this movement, and the families of the missing people. The most heroic thing they've done is they marched over 100, I think 106 days on foot in 2014 from Quetta to Karachi, Karachi to Islamabad. They went on foot, no cars. It was a foot march. They would start 8, 9 in the morning and walk until about 5, then stop for the night. They had no funding. Accommodation was provided by people they came across en route, and they carried the placard of the missing people. And a lot of the leaders of the Baloch movement were those women who were in that march. Today, they're leading the current movement, which was camping in Islamabad. I'm out of time, so I guess my kind of final point would be that some people don't even become political prisoners. It's so bad in spaces like Fatah and Balochistan that we don't even know if they're alive or dead, and their bodies can be dumped, tortured. And there is no accountability. Whereas in some areas, there is a little bit more accountability, and we can go to court, we can meet them in prison. And yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you.